This is the Founders Catalyst. Okay, welcome in to the Founders Catalyst first ever interview. You've been listening to Lee and I have chats now for the better part of 10, 11 episodes. And one thing we were very passionate about doing when we started the show was bringing on founders who are in the thick of it, very much along the way in their journey, who have established themselves and their organizations for many years. Proof of concept is significantly established by this point, and we can learn from their journey. We can get an idea of really what it has taken for them to get to where it is they are today, and even discuss the role that coaching may have played at times throughout that journey as well. So instead of me introducing our guest, I think, Lee, it only makes sense that you introduce our guest.
Okay. Dear listeners and friends, our guest today is Michael Brandt. He is the owner of Ketone IQ. You got to go and follow him on social media. He is incredible. He puts out so much fun, interesting content. It's definitely a question we're going to ask a little bit later about personal branding and how important that is for founders. But definitely check out Michael's personal social media and his company's social media. Both of them are really inspiring. And I think, Michael, I'd like you to start by introducing what is Ketone IQ and why did you start with that?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Lee and Steve, and looking forward to a fun conversation today. I got into this space. I'm a big athlete. I'm a big marathon runner, run 10 miles every day, just deep in it. And early days, a decade ago, when I started getting into it, I was very curious about what levers you could pull, like what doesn't exist. It's very inspiring that, electrolytes, Gatorade, it's only been around 50 years. Before that, it was people were just drinking good old fashioned water. All these products around us, protein powder, carb gels. 100 years ago in the Tour de France, people were smoking cigarettes and drinking champagne halfway up Mount Ventoux.
French influence.
Yeah. So the sport's always progressing. I think it's naive to think that we're where we need to be, or we're at some final pinnacle of performance nutrition. We continue to learn and improve, and so it came from this personal passion I have as an athlete. And in 2019, I got a $6 million contract with the Department of Defense, United States Department of Defense Special Operations Command, to do a large-scale research study on ketones as high-performance energy. And why ketones leading into that was I came in very tops down, looking as an engineer, as an athlete myself, what should exist that doesn't exist yet, just very broadly read in the literature, looking at what was possible. And your body makes this thing called ketones, and they're this really efficient molecule. They have calories, they have energy inside of them that your body can use, your muscles can use, your brain cells can use. They're really efficient. They turn into ATP, which is your just basic currency of energy in your cells. They turn into ATP very efficiently and using less oxygen, and your body makes them, and science has known about them for 100 plus years. And no one had ever really figured out a way to make an affordable formulated supplement version of this. And that was the light bulb moment for me. Was like, okay, there's this really cool opportunity here that could be as big as electrolytes or protein powder or caffeine that no one's really cracked the code on yet. And it was very validating to get an initial large contract with the Department of Defense. At the time, the product was really expensive and crazy tasting and all that stuff, but like we had a customer, and I think that's something we can talk more about. It was like finding your first customer, your first 1,000 customers. That's the dark days, the dark ages of any company. But it's really important. It's meaningful who your initial customer is and how you develop from there. After working with the DoD for several years, got the formula to a spot where it made sense to commercialize it. Just brought the costs down and made it taste nice, and figured out the go-to-market and the positioning and the format and the packaging and the naming, and launched it to the consumer world in 2022. And it's been ripping and roaring ever since. And our whole mission is to make a better energy shot. A lot of energy shots out there, won't name names, but a lot of energy shots out there have this perception of like they work, but they're unhealthy for you. So what if there was an energy shot that was actually good for you and metabolically efficient and all these good good things, and that story's becoming true just day by day, brick by brick. And we've come a long way. We're doing 8 figures a year, but we're still very small compared to the old guard of your 5 hour Red Bull Monster. We're still very, very small compared to those guys. So there's a whole lot out in front of us, and we're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I can hear that, and as much, the hardest thing today is going to be not allowing the squirrel in me to start asking all these questions around the business and the model and all this kind of thing, because it's almost a different conversation. It's not necessarily why we're here, because I think that even just some of the things you're alluding to right there, I'm sure people are listening and being like, please tell me more on this, please tell me more on this. And to Lee's point, so much of this story has already been spread across social media and all this kind of stuff, and I encourage people definitely go check more out about Michael so you can learn more about the story itself in terms of just the X's and O's within the business. But something I definitely want to speak to is Lee has been able to educate me a lot more on your journey, is that there was this kind of public failure at the beginning that was Shark Tank. So there's this Shark Tank story where you go on the show and most people would consider what happened to you to be a reason to stop. And I would just love for you to take us from that point where you went, just tell us about what happened there on the show, and then really the response that you were able to execute from that point onwards.
It's true. Went on Shark Tank, had a great episode, but unfortunately did not do a deal with the Sharks. And everything's a blessing in disguise. It's always good to get sets and reps. It's always good to tell your story on a national stage like that. And I mean, the truth of the matter is we fundraised prior to Shark Tank, and we've fundraised at higher valuation than what we asked for on Shark Tank. I mean, significantly higher, and like since being on Shark Tank. So it's all good in that sense. I think a lot of experience that you have as an entrepreneur and in life, but really as an entrepreneur, you can't look at it as like the losses are hurting you. It's that everything is points on the board. Like worst case is you don't get any points on the board today, but very rarely are you losing points by trying. Like if you get a rejection, a failure, whatever, it's like, okay, well, it's less points than you wanted, but you could get up the next day and go and get more points on the next shot on goal. And I think that mindset just makes you very resilient, really bouncy to be able to get up and do it. It's like, yeah, Shark Tank, I don't know. It's like, okay, on the plus column, we got a primetime ad on nationwide television, and they replay our episode all the time. People still send me pictures on like the TV on the back of the seat in front of them on like a Delta flight or whatever. They're seeing a rerun. So we get like massive amount of impressions, and good set, good rep, pitching to professional investors. On the minus column, it's like, okay, didn't do a deal that day, but it's like, you got some points on the board, and then like you get up and brush yourself off and you do it again. And I think just even owning that, I mean, to your point, it's one of the stories that went viral on social media, because I was just talking about how it went down, and it's one of my pinned posts on my social media page. Just like owning it, I think that also is refreshing to people to just, I don't know. I could see a world where someone doesn't get a deal, public rejection, and you feel knocked off your horse and deflated. But for me, I think that didn't even occur to me. It was like, to me, it was just like cool. Like to me, it was like, okay, we're working on building our business. We have this day to go fly to LA to go like razzle and dazzle. And then the next day you just go back to work anyways. Like it didn't occur to me that like you would stop working based on the outcome of that show.
I love that reflection, Michael. And I love how I think this is something that I've seen you're really gifted at, is how good you are at reframing things and using them. So I really like that reflection of there's no bad by doing this. It's a great advert for you and the product and the company and what you're doing and your mission. And having watched that video on Instagram, and I highly recommend other people go and do it, the big takeaway there was it's all practice. And this is something from our world in sports that me and Steve would often be saying to people, like, you've got to go and practice. You've got to go practice racing. And it's not always about the winning. It's what do you learn from doing the race that then you take away, that improves you, exposes where your weaknesses are. So you go, okay, right, what do I need to change to be better? And I think for my own journey, some of my biggest losses have ended up with my biggest wins because I was so motivated for that not to happen again, or to plug that gap in my skill set. And that made me a better athlete, or it made me a better leader. So thank you for sharing that.
There's something so powerful about that race experience point. It's just an analogy that when you get into marathon running or any type of sport, but marathon running is what I know best. It's really important to do a few of them, and to do a 10K, do a 5K, do a neighborhood park run, do something just for the experience. And I think this hopefully an obvious analogy to business as well. It's just, but the, you know, carb loading for a couple of days beforehand, hydrating, like getting good night's sleep, showing up on time. A lot of my runs, I just fit it into the day and I'm procrastinating. I get it done. But no, like gun goes off at 7:10 a.m. for the A corral. Like you better be there. All the things, the race bib, how does pinning the race bib on your jacket, drinking enough fuel throughout the race, like all those little things. And yeah, I mean, it's the analogy into business for me is obvious too, is that just getting preparation, getting practice rounds, and it just never hurts. You're just only ever adding points to the board, and it's a matter of how many points.
Yeah, and I think firstly, I have stories that I'm not going to share in terms of me learning from bibs not being put on and all this kind of stuff. I was a swimmer, Michael. So for me, it's just like the moment I tried running, I was like, there's so much I don't know that I'm learning about 6 miles into something that is already uncomfortable. But no, I think the one thing that's really I find interesting about just the insight with Shark Tank is that you weren't going in there with the mindset of we're relying on this. That this is this is the make or break moment. You weren't framing it into something that it wasn't. And I think it's so easy to fall into that trap. It's a public spectacle. There's opportunities that come with it. There's prestige associated with it. And it's really easy to fall into that trap. But instead, to your point, you already had these discussions. It was like, whatever the result of this, we already have a process in place. This is just an add-on that we can bring in. And I think there's a message there for anyone listening, especially a founder. It's like when you're putting all your eggs in one basket based on this one thing, you really are asking for trouble at that point. And I just don't hear that at all in the story. It was just a blip on the radar of what the journey was for you guys.
Nothing is make or break. Very few, if any, things are make or break. I think that's just true. I also think it's your job as an entrepreneur to be a machine for creating optionality for your business. Okay, you're pitching Target. Okay, that's a big opportunity if you land nationwide distribution in Target. But if that doesn't go well, like you better be also talking to Costco and Whole Foods and Walmart and everywhere else, right? So combination of just mental framing as well as just a way to move in the world is you can't look at anything as I need to hire this exact person. It's like have a pipeline going so that like the second best person is also very, very good, or that maybe they're even better. When you keep running your process, you hire someone better than the person that you met earlier on. You got to have that abundance mindset. And yeah, I don't think you do yourself any service when you're saying that this is the make or break. Like this, if I can succeed here, I'm a good entrepreneur. If I don't succeed, I'm a bad entrepreneur. I think that's a toxic way to think about it. I think you got to create opportunities all around you. And I think that's probably the best thing. That's probably one of the defining characteristics of an entrepreneur, or someone who I would consider entrepreneurial, is being relentlessly resourceful, just able to create something from nothing, be able to create opportunities from where there aren't any. One door closes and two doors open. If a new door opens, there's two more doors behind that door. Like no matter what doors are opening or closing, like there's just always more doors out there.
Yeah, I love your reflection there of creating opportunity and not getting stuck at the first hurdle. And I think for me, that always comes back to resilience. And something I really admire about you, Michael, in our conversations, I find you to be incredibly resilient. And I think that is actually more important than how smart you are. I think your ability to be resilient is really what sets founders apart. The ability to get up after a setback, do it again, to get up and know that you might have to try a bunch of different things before you figure out what works, be that a bunch of different recipes for your product, a bunch of different flavors, knock on a bunch of different doors to get funding. And resilience is something that I think we undervalue as humans and as a society.
I agree. There's this thought experiment that was shared with me that if you have IQ or intelligence, however you want to measure it, and you have resilience, imagine that someone is fully loaded on both, and then you start like subtracting points on one or the other. That if someone's high on intelligence and you start knocking down points of resilience, you very quickly get to like your lazy genius. You get to your person who's like know-it-all, knows how, has a $1 billion idea, but like never gets off the couch to go and do it, can't take rejection, can't pull it together, doesn't get a lot done. If you go back, reset the bars, and then you start knocking down points of IQ, okay, you get actually like someone who's successfully running like a waste management business or like Toyota dealerships, or I hope I'm not like throwing strays at people out there like running these great businesses. Like that, like you don't have to create SpaceX, you don't have to create Facebook or whatever. You don't have to create some like galaxy brain, massively innovative thing to do quite well for yourself in your career by simply being resilient. Like you show up every day, honest, high integrity, have a mission, like down to learn. Like you don't have to be the smartest person on planet Earth. If you are, that's obviously we want to be maxed out on both. But yeah, to your point, I'd rather put poker chips behind the high resilience person versus the just like high smarts person who maybe lacks resilience any day.
And it says so much about the person's journey too, doesn't it? Like again, like we are all speaking from this athlete mindset, and in the world of sport, you almost take resiliency for granted in many ways. You know, it's just like that once you get to a certain level, you've probably not gotten there without it, you know, and then suddenly you step into the business world and it's like, okay, really resilience is one of these things that when we come out of times like the COVIDs and all that kind of thing, you look at that and you go, man, as human beings, we don't do resilience overly well, do we? We struggle in a time where things are taken away from us and things are not in the control that we want it to be. And so much of this world of entrepreneurship is like, okay, there's a lot of this that's out of my control. How am I going to handle that part of this while also ensuring that I'm using that IQ, I'm using that knowledge, my talents, etc., in those areas where I specifically, you know, do have control at the same time.
Yeah. It's you got to keep showing up, and it's interesting your point on athletes. I think athletes, there's a reason there's that trope of like, you know, people want to hire athletes. Athletes tend to do really well in certain roles, sales roles. A lot of times we're getting a lot of rejections. That I get it. I get it more and more. Like why people like athletes, and in my own just DNA, seeing how my development as an athlete, because I wasn't a collegiate athlete. I got into endurance sports. I was an active, healthy guy, but like I got like competitive kind of post college as my professional career was also ramping up, and seeing how the discipline of showing up every day. Yeah, I have one tattoo, and it's a tattoo of the San Francisco Marathon, which was the first marathon I ran, and I did it in under 3 hours and qualified for Boston. And like more importantly, in the process of it, it changed me. I just saw that like on every given day I showed up, and no given run on any given day is that hard. Like what's hard is stringing it together for 18 weeks and showing up every day. And I think learning both of those, I think I got a lot of maturity. I think a younger version of me, when I had a big goal, I would like burn at both ends to try and get it done. Like today, this week, like just pull all nighters, go, okay, I want to do this thing. Like I gotta like throw everything I got it, and realizing that breaking it into pieces and showing up every day and creating a process around it, maybe a team around it, systems around it, that you can truly move mountains if you have the right system around you. And you can get a great time in the marathon, not by doing this Herculean thing. Like the race itself was almost easy for me. Like what was hard was the 2,000 miles of training I did. The 26.2 that I did on the actual race day was easy. It was a formality. It was like a check-in after having done all the hard work to like, okay, yeah, like did your body adapt to the training? Like, yes, yeah. And I think that carried over into business in some profound ways for me. And to your point, I get why the athlete mentality, that like keep showing up every day, that resilience, it's so obvious in sport. because a lot of, it's sports in a way simpler than the complications of real life, but it's a great analogy. And if I think you have the resilience from sport, then it's easy to see how that translates into, bigger games of business and career.
Yeah, I love your reflections there, Michael. I'm curious what it took for you. I know you as a very high energy person. What it took for you to slow that down a bit and to develop more of those processes and to be a little bit more methodical than what you shared with us at the beginning of, I love to jump in and bash stuff out and go crazy and stay up all night. Like, how did you make that sustainable rather than that explosive fire?
Well, it's interesting because I think what gets a business off the ground when it's like you and a co-founder or two and $0 in the bank, and if you're young, zero reputation behind you, zero anything, is just pure fire. It is pure.
Yeah.
How much work, how much can you do personally? And at any company that grows out of that stage successfully, you have to fundamentally change as a leader. That it's been clear to me for a long time that like the growth of the business is endemic to my growth as a leader. And there's that point where, okay, yeah, another all-nighter, another incremental 4 hours, 10 hours, whatever of work a week, a month, whatever from me is not the gating factor. It's hiring a great person that can exceed my capabilities in a given area, whether it's supply chain or marketing or whatever, that you're able to hire someone else and lead them and delegate them. And then it's about systems. It's about, setting up the right shared cultural values. It's about having a good OKR setting process. It's about being an inspiring leader and being in a good mood and being positive, but also challenging people to grow. And yeah, if me getting better sleep lets me show up better for the 35 people on my team, and especially like the people that I work most closely with on the exec team, if me working a couple hours less and sleeping better lets me show up better for the majority of what's actually important and high leverage in my work, which is being a leader, then it's a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, it ends up being foolish to be burning the midnight oil, like clicking around on stuff inside of Excel or Photoshop or whatever. That was the stuff that, and that's how you make your first million. I think you got to be good at clicking on stuff inside of Photoshop and Excel in your email inbox. I think that's how you make your first million, but it's like, I don't think that's how you make 100 mil. And it's somewhere in between you translate as a leader. And I think there's more than one transformation that you make as a leader, to be clear. But I think there is an important one from going from like superstar individual to leader with a capital L.
Right. And something that is really apparent through a lot of these insights that you provided so far is that desire to change. It's clear that we've talked about it already in the few episodes that we've done. Like, so much of the work around in our world as coaches and in your world as an entrepreneur, it's one thing to know you need it. It's another thing to want to do it. And it's so clear and apparent that there's so much drive and desire from you to not only have been open enough to become aware of these. You can call it a blind spot. You can call it an opportunity for growth, whatever you want to call it. But you've been open to seeing it. And then you've been willing to receive it. And then finally, you've been willing to act upon it too. Talk to us a little bit about when you use these insights around the importance of prioritizing yourself and the willingness to change. Where was it in the journey that you realized, okay, I need to start investing and making this a priority when it comes to my own personal growth?
I remember when I was young, when I was in high school, I made it a mission. I grew up in Chicago, went to public school, took the train to school, transferred lines. I was just like very in the fabric of the city. And I started making it my mission to get good at sparking up conversations with strangers. And it was little things like you're in line at a coffee shop, like have a good conversation with the person in front of you in line. And how do you do that? Just say, what's good here? You come up on the spot. there's a certain way of being. And so the point inside of there was that if you consider yourself as a shy person, as a fixed trait, then you're screwed. If you consider yourself as a person who doesn't yet have the skill set to be able to spark off a conversation with people, but you respect that it's a skill, you respect that it's something that you can spend X hours on developing, and there's like something that you can do. You can, I mean, just to use that analogy, you could brainstorm, okay, what are 20 things I could say to a stranger in a coffee shop? You could write that down in the peace of your own home when you're not nervous, and just have that on you, and then like take it for a spin the next time you walk around. You can look at things as skills rather than fixed characteristics. And from a young age, I saw that a lot of people in the world operate as though aspects of their being are fixed, when in fact they're malleable. And you can get sets and reps. Same way you can put on more muscles or get a faster 5K time or get a better SAT score. You can get better at there's a lot larger window of what you can get better at too. You can get better at your social skills. You can become more charismatic. You can become funnier. You can be a better leader. That a lot of those people who are seen as natural leaders, it's like, well, they've just spent a lot of hours figuring it out. Like, they've watched the film, they watched the tape, they watched other great leaders, they watch themselves on camera and how they present in front of a room. They've done it. And look, if your mom is a senator and you were exposed to that, you got your 10,000 hours in before you turn 10 years old, like, cool, great. But like, the point is, like, there's no natural, right? Like, you still just got your sets and reps in early, and that you can be 40 years old and thinking about, hey, I want to be more XYZ. I want to have more executive presence. I want to have better ability to ask my boss for a raise. I want to have better ability. I want to be a better salesperson. I want to be more organized. That, like, it's all malleable. Like, you don't have to put yourself into a box per se. And so I would say, on the meta level, I consider anyone in theory can be coachable on a lot of different dimensions. Not everyone's open to it. I think that's important. There's a lot of people like don't see it, don't appreciate it. They think that they're very fixed. The most that I can do is make sure that I'm coachable and malleable and learning what's the highest vector of my own growth, and then surrounding myself with people who are similarly. In my position, hiring people and setting the culture of my team, is making sure that growth mindset is a really important part of what all of our work is.
Yeah. And that's something I appreciate from working with you, Michael. Your intense curiosity, and also how you frame this of just everything is learnable. And that's not the norm. I think a lot of people get comfortable staying where they are, because for you to say everything is learnable, you have to also admit, I don't actually know it all. And for some people, that's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
For many of us,
that's the part that hurts.
The humbleness, the humility to go, oh, I actually do need to learn more here, and I'm not as good as I'd like to be. So while we're talking about this, you've opened up the point about coaching. I'm curious what's been the biggest surprising takeaway from you from being coached so far, and what's still your biggest challenge, if you're open to sharing that with us?
Yeah, I've had different coaches over the years. My first job out of college, I worked at YouTube, at Google, and it's a really exciting time. It's early days at YouTube, and it was a fun place to be. And one of the perks of the job there was that I had a management coach. And so to me, it's always been there, part of my career. Even, it's been off and on, but from the onset, given that I had a coach in my first job out of undergrad, it always was there. It was always a lever. It always made sense to me. It wasn't something where I was like in some grain of never having had a coach for decades, and then like all of a sudden there's this concept of like, oh, well, you're imperfect and you need to improve and go get a coach. It was always there that like you should have this like person on your shoulder that's helping you to think out ahead. I mean, there's all the cliche stuff. Michael Jordan had a coach, Tiger Woods has a coach, like all that stuff that like the best of the best. Part of the reason that they're the best is that they have a coach. It is, I think, hubris to think that you're just going to intuitively be excellent at your role? Like, how could that be? Like, if you actually think about it, like there is a lot to learn, and I think you can learn a certain amount just through trial and error and experience. I do believe that, but if you can learn it even 10% faster by having a coach, it's worth it, right? Like, what are the types of gains that we're looking for here, right? Like, if 10% I mean, what is that quote? Compounding interest is the greatest force on the planet, something like that. That I think is an Einstein quote. That yeah, if you can if you be progressing 10% better a year, it sounds small, but at the end of a decade, you're going to be like 300% better than if you hadn't done that. So definitely the pursuit of becoming your best self is a big part of the game. And I've always seen it and have made a point to, it's something we filter for, something we really interrogate for when we're bringing new people onto the team is, do they have that? Like, are they different from who they were a few years ago? And what are their plans to be different in a few years? And I always look for really credible answer. Like I tell people to be like 100% selfish with me. Like, what are you looking for? What do you want out of this job? Just like, don't give me I want to sell more ketones to the world and be like, yes, great. Like, goes without saying, I want to hear the selfish reason. Like, if you're a designer and you want to work here, it's like, I want to do X, Y, and Z and like get my portfolio up to this amazing spot. If you're a partnerships person, it's like, I want to meet like all these people. I want to grow my Rolodex and like do this stuff. And like hearing what motivates that person, because some people, they don't have a good answer to that. Like, they don't have that ambition, that drive to like they want to show up and get a paycheck, and they, maybe they'll be earnest. And I'm not saying that they're going to be the worst person ever, but if someone doesn't have a credible answer to like their selfish goals for where they want to get to, I have a hard time gelling with them. I like this concept. We call it selfish alignment, where I want to hear how your selfish goals for your career align with what we want to do. Because yeah, if you're a partnerships person and you want to meet every pro cyclist and every pro athlete in every other sport, and you see this as a conduit to go and do that, we are so aligned. Like, and it's believable. It's like, okay, yeah, like you're getting something out of this. You know how you want to change and grow. You know your roadmap. It dovetails into what we're doing. If you win on your own terms, you're also going to help the business out a lot. The business wins. And yeah, I always look for that just personal growth vector from anyone that we're bringing on the team. Yeah,
selfish alignment. That's a new one for me, and I love it. Absolutely adore it. I think again in a leadership space, so much of the work I'm doing as a coach, half the time I'm trying to help a leader see the need to focus on them, and it feels like we're always putting out fires sometimes as a leader. Like, hey, what's going on around you? Who can you save in that fire and all this kind of stuff? And it's like, well, sometimes we just need to look at us, get out the building that's on fire. Maybe that's a good place to start and focus on you and how you can be selfish. And I think my immediate awareness just from 30 minutes of just listening to you, Michael, is you have, whether it's a natural ability, whether the world of coaching has helped you with this, whether it's a bit of both and everything you surround yourself with, but you have an ability to assess yourself against what's possible, as opposed to, I'm sure you are assessing like what's happening as it's happening around you and where you've come from. Don't get me wrong, but even going back to your initial insight around why ketone, why did you start? You saw what's possible, you considered what's possible, and you focused on that as you were building the product and the brand. So I'm curious now, Lee sort of suggested this in part of his question before, and I want to really kind of double down on this now. When you look at yourself and the company, tell our listeners a little bit, like, what's possible for you now? How do you even begin to answer that question? Like, when you consider what's possible for Michael, I want to just throw that at you and just see kind of what comes back here.
The sky is the limit, truly. I think we're still very early. I think that in our space, which is CPG and energy shots in particular, and we created something super inventive here. I think it's as big as electrolytes or protein or caffeine or these other nutritional primitives that are all like hundreds of billions of dollars of market around them. And we had the wherewithal to purchase ketone.com. And we're here to just create and capture a ton of value around it. And then it's unbounded. Like Red Bull owns Formula One teams. They own I think they just bought Bora Hansgrohe. We were just talking about that yesterday, Lee. I think it's Red Bull Hansgrohe now or something. And it's, and in a way that's just like, that's even small balls. Like the sky's the limit for where things can go. And especially when you really zoom out of like, okay, well, where could the next business be? Where can it go? If we build this band of brothers and sisters together where we're accomplishing great things, and we exit the business and we do the next one, or we have multiple businesses going, we get to a scale where maybe I'm not the CEO anymore, and where I have my hands in a couple of different businesses that are all succeeding in different ways. I think the sky's the limit. I think, the dream is really, just being able to have fun every day, and where the fun kind of interleaves with creating value for the business. And I think there's a world where, just meeting interesting people who are at the top of their craft, whether they're athletes or other business people or this or that. I like the curious part of me just has fun doing that. And if that more and more, I feel that shift there where, as a leader, spending less time clicking around in Photoshop and in Excel, which is fun in its own way, but I'm spending more time just meeting, outstanding, interesting individuals, and I get to call it work. So I think it's already really fun. I think it gets even more fun from here. And one thing I wanted to say too, on the point on kind of ability to size yourself up and see where you're at and assess other people, I think a corollary to that is that when I look at other people who are succeeding in the world, like I don't ever get jealous. Like, to me, it doesn't register as jealousy. Like I beat that out of my system, I don't know, like decades ago, where to me, it's all data. It's not that I don't care. I think that's naive to say like, oh, I don't care what's going on in the world, because there's interesting data all around you. It's really interesting. Like, okay, how did this company, oh, wow, this company has been around for less time than you already sold for fabulous sums of money. Okay, well, like, what did they do? What was their edge? What did they find? Like, and if you can get out of the jealousy or having to like, oh, well, I'm better than them because of this reason or that reason, or they're not as good, or I could have done, like, if you get out of the comparison mode, comparison is the thief of joy. Everything around you, and when your friends are succeeding, when your enemies are succeeding, like, it doesn't matter. There's always something to learn, right? You get beat in a tennis match. It's like, you can feel bad about it, or you can like use it as an opportunity to improve your game. Like, what did that person do really well? How could I do that? Like, what's the weak point in my game? And seeing it as a gift. Oh, wow, that is awesome. That at this point I learned something new that can make me better. And so I'm constantly collecting data. And I think it's important to remove the ego, remove the jealousy, remove the comparison from what you're seeing in the world around you. Because then you get this very clear signal of what performance looks like, what output looks like, and you're able to be honest with yourself about where you need to improve, as opposed to having these layers of like ego and jealousy and narrative and self-protection and all that stuff. It's garbage that gets in the way of the objective sense of self-measure that that's what you're really after with a growth mindset.
Love it.
You've opened the door, so let's walk through it a little bit. What are the things, pick one thing more if you like, that are stopping you from personally being the leader that you want to be? What is your next evolution? So you've talked about, and I think you were spot on. I really want to reiterate what you said, because this is the area that I work with, is people going from being outstanding individual contributors at the beginning of their startup journey, where you're doing everything and you're just brilliant at it, but you're working at this unsustainable pace, to then going, okay, I need to now make this sustainable for the long haul and get other people in to grow. And you're doing that beautifully. What's the next part of that journey for you? What's going to be the challenge for you to overcome to get to that next level?
Yeah, it's interesting. One answer is that like you start out as an individual contributor, and then you become a leader, and then you become a leader of leaders, and then you become a leader of leaders of leaders. I it's a little bit tongue in cheek here, but I think like that's the game, is like how many levels of like excellent A-star leaders can you build around you? I think that's where I'm at now, is honestly, being a leader of an extremely talented team, and like helping those people to be absolute A-star leaders of the talented teams underneath them that themselves have leaders inside of them. I don't know how many levels of leaders there are. It's like it takes a lot. It's hard, like, because any little like chink in the armor or hitch in your giddy up, like it telescopes out drastically. That like in order for the signal to be good, like at the most junior person in a 30-person org, like the signal has to start out really pure, really good. Like the operating practices, the culture, all that. By the time it gets like echoed through a game of telephone, through 3 different lines of reporting, and that's, I mean, we're not even big yet, right? There's 300, there's 3,000, there's 300,000 person companies out there that I think to be excellent there, the game just changes again and again and again. So what I think about a lot for going to the next level, I think a lot about communication. I think a lot about being a better communicator. I think that's the differentiator. I think being able to inspire people, lead people across every surface area, across like a one-on-one meeting, across a social media post, across a pitch to investors, across anything. I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, that the best leaders are great communicators, and I think there's areas where I'm strong. I think I have good insights. I think sometimes I can do a better job of communicating them. I think you can also be like more disciplined, more, some people just are really like communicate constantly. I think it's possible to make more space in your day for it. I think there's also just a simple virtue of continuously showing up again and again, and just continue communicating out in public for a long, long time until that's your personal brand is even that much more developed. That's what I think about. It's like kind of next factor, next level.
Yeah, and now you guys have what you can focus on in coaching for the next quarter too, right? But no, I think you touched on a couple of things right there as well, and I want to be respectful of time too. We're getting towards the end of the episode, but one thing that Lee did mention there at the beginning, and you just mentioned it there, is it's just the importance of personal brand, and there's so many ways to look through it. We just covered a couple right there. It's one, if you have a personal brand within an organization, the organization that you operate and run, like, it matters and it carries weight. And then there's this personal brand outside of the organization, and then there's so many different elements within that too. When did personal brand become something for you that you were obviously aware of? And secondly, how do you continue to prioritize just the importance of it and the way you invest in it?
That's a great question, and something that honestly I evolved on. Maybe no surprise, but I started out thinking that the brand is the brand, like make the brand really good, and that you don't have to be really out there as a founder, as an operator, that just make the brand really good, that you can move in silence as the operator behind it, but let the brand do all the talking. I think that's outdated. I think in this day and age, I think it's a massive advantage that if you have that bone in your body, and even if you don't, it's like develop it, that like being out there as a founder, I think that there's an interplay between like what Apple was and what Steve Jobs was, or what Tesla is and who Elon Musk is, that there's that play between the brand and the founder, or prominent operator executive on the brand. And there's a lot in common, but there's a lot different, and I think they feed off of each other in a really positive way. I think that the founder, obviously, you benefit a lot from the success of the brand. It shines well on you, and then by building a brand as a founder, you personalize the brand, where people, especially in this day and age, don't like being talked to by a logo on a page. It feels very corporate. That's what all the big companies can do. And one of your unique advantages as a smaller company is you can just be honest and transparent. You can build in public, and you're not expected to be infallible. And people like you don't need to clear things by 5 layers of PR and HR and legal and marketing, and so you can just go. And so like it's super important to take advantage of that, humanize the brand. I always think about it as being, citizen zero of your own product too, just like showing the world like the kinds of people that your cult, your tribe is. And there's no better way to do that than to show the world. And it's not that I'm expecting everyone to like run marathons or something. It's more broadly like, but our brand is very, we're high performance. Like we expect people to be doing well and have ambitions and goals and in an aspect of their life. And if I can be like a metaphorical version of that, because I run a lot and lead a business, if someone wants to take that to, being, getting their JD in law school and, staying in good shape while they do it. Like there's a million ways that you could take it to. And I think that it's hard to do that with just like the brand alone. I think as a founder, you need to be out there. And on just like a practical level, it opens a lot of doors for partnerships, for investors, for all that. Like if you got to put the lightning rod out there, like you gotta have something that people can interact with. I think it's just efficient. It's like, why do you go to a conference? Like, why do you get on a Zoom call? Why do you get like, you're trying to express something that you have, that some way that you could possibly hook into interplaying with other people. And if you're just doing that on a constant basis on many to one, if you're constantly pushing content and ideas out there, that then like there's a lot of investors or acquirers or retailers that are like keeping tabs on how my business is doing without me having to like I'll go to the conference, I'll get on the Zoom call, but like, it's just very efficient that I am able to generate awareness across, thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people in some cases from behind my computer, from behind a camera. I think you could literally just take a kind of business, like hard analytics approach to it and just say like, it's inefficient to not do that.
There's one thing a couple of things I want to reiterate from what you said there that I think are super important for people listening. You talked about humanizing the brand. And I think as a startup and scale up company, that's what's really making brands stand out, is where the founder is willing to say, this is why I did this. This is why I believe this to be important. And I'm a human being like you. I go running like you go running. And I started this because I wanted to be better at running. And I knew there was a way to do it, which was to have a better fuel source. So I went and made it. And I see that from you. I see that from Shane at Mudwater that I work with as well, where your passion for the product and for the journey is actually what gets people to want to follow you and want to buy the product and want to be part of that movement that you're creating. And I think you do an excellent job of sharing that and displaying that. And I think for those out there that are earlier in their journey, I think you can't not do enough of it. The more you do of it, the more you explain of why you're doing this, the more likely people are going to be to trust you. And I think trust is such a big thing that startups can capitalize on that large corporations have lost. We don't trust large corporations. I can't say the word properly because they've let us down. Right? The gas industry let us down. The food industry's let us down. And this is where I think it's this new movement of younger founders to step forward and say, I do actually care about you as a person. And my product is for you because I care about you. I think that's important and powerful.
I think when you put your face on it, there's a certain level of integrity where corporations are faceless, and doesn't seem to be a person who really stands behind it. It's unclear who the buck stops with at your large food company, at your large pharmaceutical company, at your whatever. It's not clear. No, it's just this vague swarm of talking heads, and like no one's really the person. And I think it's very refreshing to see someone saying, no, I made this and I think this is a good product, and you're welcome to disagree or agree. And here it is. And here's my face. And I'm putting my integrity and my reputation behind it. I think that's very refreshing. And Lee, I really appreciate the riff as well on the way to do it. I think that's really good advice for especially someone getting started. But I think it's inspirational to me as well on my journey, which is that it's a really good frame to say, as a founder, I'm here because I was drawn in to this, technology or this product or this concept, that like the time has come for this idea and I'm in service of this idea. I'm the conduit for this idea to come into the world. I thought that was a really good riff, because I think what maybe holds some people back, or maybe it was a voice inside my own head, was like, I don't want to come across as like a shill, like a car salesman where I'm just like hopping on social media to like sell some stuff every day. It's like, I could see why that would be annoying, but I think the frame of like kind of wonderment and discovery of like there's a 100 million other ways to make money in the world. The reason I'm doing this is because it's interesting for XYZ reason. Oh, ketones are really interesting because of your brain chemistry and the way that your brain metabolizes ketones. And not only for an everyday person, but for someone who's suffered any kind of neurodegenerative disease, ketones are really going to light up your brain energy. That I can look at it as like, okay, ketones are this thing on the pedestal, and I'm there to, like, there's a lot of other things we could be working on in the world, but I am drawn to ketones. And I think that framing where I'm not trying to like sell you on it. It's like, if I fall off a cliff tomorrow, like the time has come for ketones. They will be widespread in a decade. And I think that framing, I don't know, we were just riffing on it yesterday, Lee, I think is good for any entrepreneur to think through, of just being in service of the idea, being a conduit for an idea whose time has come, can maybe detangle that feeling of like feeling like you have to like hard sell it all the time. And that's what we mean when we say, be present on social media.
Yeah. And it's so rooted in values too. I mean, it's so abundantly clear as you speak to this. You don't have to somehow show up differently in any way. It's so consistent. Your values are your values. Your product is aligned with those values. And so you can show up in this public platform at any point as you work on this, and you continue to refine how you do these sort of things whilst remaining as true as possible, like you said, to that integrity piece, as true to your values as possible in terms of the product, in terms of who you are. It's all in alignment. Michael, brother, like this has been an absolute masterclass just in terms of really what we're looking for from these discussions. Right? We've gotten a wonderful view under the hood of really your journey and how you built what you built, the whys behind it, the power and the impact of coaching. And I'll let Lee have the final word as we finish up here. But before I let you go, I would love if you could just capture, maybe really short and sweet, just what might be that parting advice, that parting insight that you would provide to any entrepreneur, no matter where they are in their journey right now, that founder. What words do you think they need to hear from you?
Be optimistic, be resilient, be a machine for creating opportunities, and find the smartest people and convince them to work with you. Two advices.
Love it.
I like that last one particularly. Michael, you're an inspiration to me. I love working with people that inspire me. I say this to people, the people that I want to work with are so smart that I should find them slightly intimidating, because it raises my game as a coach. I want to be working with people that make me want to be a better coach, that inspire me to be a better coach, that inspire me to support you in your journey of changing the world. And that matters a lot to me. I'm one person, and if I can leverage that by coaching incredible people that are doing incredible things, my impact on the world is greater. So if I make you 10% better every year for the next 10 years, that massively leverages what I can do as a human being. So I'm so grateful to be in partnership with you and work with you. As I said, you really inspire me. And thanks for being on here and sharing your journey. As Steve said, what a great under the cover demonstration of what it takes to be a founder and how to frame your way of thinking. I think that's the way I'd really like to sell this episode to people, is how to frame the way you're thinking to be successful. And my takeaways from this are: resilience is key. Being in line with your mission is key, so that you do feel comfortable sharing that publicly and stepping into it. And I really liked what you shared with us about practicing things that you're uncomfortable doing. I want to go back to it because I thought it was gold, was getting on the train and talking to people And I think we need another episode is to talk to you about your introversion, because the fact that you were willing to get discomfort or uncomfortable and work on that is really inspiring to me.
The respect is mutual. This is a great conversation, and hope, to be continued. This is great. And I encourage people to say hello, give a follow. I'm on all the social platforms. Michael D. Brandt. Our company is Ketone IQ. Say hello. I'd love to interact with people, hear what people are up to out there. And Steve and Lee, this is a ton of fun. Appreciate you having me on.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Thanks for being on, Michael. Appreciate it.